What's real, what's hype, what's promising, and what's actually worth your attention. Right now, there's a gold rush happening around peptides. Clinics are selling them, influencers are injecting them, and the promises are enormous. More energy, faster fat loss, younger skin, better recovery, longer life. If you listen to the marketing, peptides sound like the closest thing we've ever found to the fountain of youth. But here's what almost nobody tells you. Most of the research, the little that exists, was done in men. Women between 40 and 60, the people whose bodies are changing the fastest, were largely left out of the data. So you're being marketed to the most aggressively with the least evidence about you specifically. That's not conspiracy. It's simply how much of the science evolved. But you deserve to know that before anyone hands you a vial. So today, we're going to do this properly. What's real, what's hype, what's promising, and what's actually worth your attention. Let's get going. As former Minister of Health, I've spent much of my career evaluating therapies and deciding which ones deserve serious consideration and which ones did not. That develops a very specific instinct, the ability to separate a promised molecule from a proven intervention. I'm not here to sell you peptides. I'm not here to scare you away from them either. I'm here to help you think clearly. Because the best medical decisions are informed decisions, and that's exactly what we're going to do today. In previous episodes, we've discussed menopause, hormones, metabolism, and fat loss. Today, we're exploring peptides, the most talked about category in longevity medicine space. And the next episode, we're going to bring everything together into one complete blueprint for healthy aging. So, what are peptides really? Let's start with the basics, because the world of peptides is being used so loosely that it's become almost meaningless. A peptide is simply a short chain of amino acids, the same building blocks that make up proteins, only smaller. Your body already produces thousands of peptides naturally. They're messengers, signals, instructions. They tell cells what to do. Whether it's repair, whether it's to grow, whether it's to release hormones, regulate metabolism, control inflammation. Anyway, the list goes on. So when somebody says peptide, that doesn't tell you very much. It's like saying drug. You know, some drugs save lives, some drugs do very little, some have decades of evidence, others barely have any. Peptides are exactly the same. Some are legitimate prescription medications, some are experimental, and some are being marketed far beyond the available evidence. That's the first thing to understand. Peptides are not one thing. They're an entire category. Let's talk about what's happened recently, because the regulatory landscape has changed dramatically. Right? For years, many popular peptides sat under significant FDA scrutiny. Compounding pharmacies faced restrictions, availability became increasingly difficult. Then in 2026, much of that changed. Several peptides that had been flagged by regulators were moved from the most restrictive category and put into kind of the gray area category. Names like BPC-157, TB-500, Mots-C, and several others. But here's the nuance with this, and it's incredibly important. Removal from a restricted category does not equal approval. The FDA did not suddenly declare these peptides proven. It did not declare them safe. It did not officially endorse them. What happened is far more complicated. Many of these molecules moved into a regulatory gray zone, less restricted but not fully approved, and that's a distinction most headlines completely missed. A policy change is not a medical endorsement. Never confuse the two. Here is the women's health problem nobody talks about. Let's talk about the issue that matters most to you, the women watching this. Why is the evidence so thin in women? Historically, many early clinical trials excluded women, especially women of reproductive age. Researchers worried about hormonal fluctuations, pregnancy risks, and complexity. The result? Much of the modern medicine was built using male physiology, then applied broadly to everyone else. And that's a problem. Because a 50-year-old woman navigating perimenopause or menopause is not simply a smaller version of a young male research participant. Different hormones, different metabolism, different physiology. So when a clinic hands a woman a peptide protocol based largely on the data from younger men, they are extrapolating. They may not be doing so thoughtfully. Yeah, and you deserve to know that. If you're considering peptides, ask one question. Where is the evidence in women my age? The quality of the answer will tell you a lot about the quality of the clinic. Let's go towards the categories. Let's start with the most important category, GLP-1 medications, Semaglutide, Tirzepatide, and Retatrutide. And increasingly, newer agents are entering this development. These are peptides, and they have genuinely changed medicine. Not because influencers promoted them, because the clinical data is extraordinary. Weight loss, improved blood sugar, reduced cardiovascular risk, improved metabolic health. This is real. But here's the most important message in today's episode. And I want everyone watching to hear this clearly. Your goal is not weight loss. Your goal is fat loss while preserving muscle. Those are not the same things. When people lose weight rapidly on GLP-1 medications, a substantial percentage of that weight can come from lean tissue, muscle, and potentially bone. For women in their 40s, 50s, 60s, that's serious concern because you're already fighting age-related muscle loss. You're already facing increased osteoporosis risk. The last thing you want is accelerating loss of both or either one. So if you're using GLP-1 medications, three things become non-negotiable. Number one, high protein intake, 2 grams per kilogram of body weight, right? Much higher than most women currently consume. Number two, resistance training. Resistance training 3 to 4 times a week, not walking alone, not yoga alone, not Pilates, actual resistance training. Number three, track strength, not just body weight, because thinner does not automatically mean healthier. If there is one message I want you to remember from this episode, it's this. Fat loss improves longevity. Muscle loss accelerates frailty. Know the difference. The next category are growth hormone peptides. Okay, so growth hormones secretagogues, Sermorelin, Tesamorelin, CJC1295, Ipamorelin. These work by encouraging your body to release more growth hormone. The appeal is obvious. Better recovery, improved body composition, better sleep, potentially healthier aging. Of this group, Tesamorelin has some of the strongest evidence, particularly in specific medical populations. The others are widely used, generally well tolerated, but the long-term data in healthy women between 40 and 60 remains limited. And there is one important caution. Growth signaling is not universally beneficial. If you have a history of cancer or a strong family history of cancer, these conversations become more complicated. Growth factors help healthy tissue grow, but biology doesn't always distinguish perfectly between healthy and unhealthy tissue. Any practitioner discussing these therapies should be discussing that risk as well. So the next category we have are repair peptides, and this is, your BPC-157, TB-500. There's a couple more. Perhaps the most hyped peptides in the entire industry. The proposed uses are impressive. We're talking tendon healing, joint recovery, gut repair, inflammation reduction. The animal data is genuinely interesting. The mechanisms are plausible, and many people swear by them. But here's where we have to separate enthusiasm from evidence. Most of the compelling data remains preclinical. Cells, animals, laboratory models, robust human clinical trials are still lacking. That doesn't mean they don't work. It means we don't know enough yet. And that's a very important distinction. The people who report benefits aren't necessarily wrong. These things have shown to work in clinics, so I know they work. But anecdotes are not the same thing as evidence. That's why we run clinical trials, to determine whether something actually works or merely appears to work. But again, in clinic, they work. We've seen them work. But it's how you bring them in. So you need someone that really has experience with this to be able to kind of structure it correctly. The next category, Mots-C metabolic peptides. One peptide I find particularly fascinating is Mots-C. Not because it's proven, because it isn't, but because it originates from the mitochondria themselves, the energy production structure inside your cell. Early research suggests Mots-C may influence metabolism, insulin sensitivity, exercise adaptation, and mitochondrial function. In other words, many of the exact challenges women are being faced with after 40. It's genuinely exciting science. But here's the important distinction. Fascinating biology is not the same thing as proven medicine. Human data remains early, promising, absolutely. Established, not yet. And that's exactly how it should be viewed. The next category, the one with real approval for women. There's one peptide that's different from most others we've discussed. Bremelanotide, also known as PT-141. Unlike most peptides in the longevity space, unlike most peptides in the longevity world, this one has actually FDA approval. It is prescribed for low sexual desire in appropriate female patients. That matters because approval means clinical trials, safety monitoring, regulatory review. This is a legitimate medical option that women can discuss with their physician, and it illustrates an important lesson. The peptide with the strongest evidence often generate the least hype. If you're considering peptides, here are my rules. Rule number 1, never buy injectables from research websites. No purity guarantees, no sterility guarantees, no dose guarantees. Rule number 2, use licensed pharmacies within physician oversight and documented quality control. Rule number 3, demand proper evaluation, medical history, laboratory testing, medical review, cancer risk assessment. If none of that happens, you're not receiving medical care. You're receiving marketing. Number 4, be skeptical of peptide stacks. 5 peptides, 6 peptides, 7 peptides, all started simultaneously with no evidence for the combination. This isn't precision medicine, it's experimentation. Rule number 5, monitor outcomes. If you're going to alter growth pathways, metabolism, or hormones, objective follow-up matters. Lab matters, body composition matters. And so here, let me leave you with this. You are not behind. You do not need every new peptide. You do not need the newest biohack. You do not need a 6-compound stacks. You do not need what you need is a foundation. Strength training, protein, sleep, healthy hormones, metabolic health. Get those right first. because those fundamentals will outperform almost every longevity trend you see online. Then, if the evidence supports it, peptides can become an option. Not a rescue, not a shortcut, an option. The women who age best are rarely chasing after every molecule. They simply are doing the fundamentals exceptionally well. And when the science matters, they add intelligently, not emotionally. That's the difference. And that's exactly how I want to approach this field. Thank you for joining me. And in our next and final episode, we'll bring everything together into a complete longevity blueprint for women 40 to 60. I'll see you there. Subscribe if you haven't yet. Give me a like, send comments, invite friends. Thank you, and see you for the next one.